Hello and welcome to Castle's Corner. I am Coach Castle, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Kevin Kerns. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kevin Kerns has been professionally involved in the fitness industry for decades. He's a graduate of the University of Massachusetts, Boston. He has certifications with the NSCA, as well as FMS and many more. He has served as a strength and conditioning coach for some of the most elite professionals in MMA and the UFC. He is the creator of the Burn with Kearns program, which delivers intelligent and adaptable fitness training methods and philosophies that he personally researched and experienced firsthand for many years. He then crafted into the amazing program, Burn with Kearns, as well as a secondary program, the Growing Up Strong program, which worked with promoting healthy habits, directions, and food knowledge, supporting the happiness and health of children. After that, he then created the Beachbody Transformation to help groups of individuals over the age of 40 to get in the very best shape of their lives again. Now, his writings have been featured in a multitude of media platforms, including the Boston Herald, Men's Fitness, and many more. He's also an author of Always Pick Glass, as well as There's a Light at the End of the Tunnel. And there's much more to be said about him, but I'll just let him speak for himself.
Well, that's the problem. I don't shut up about myself. Shameless self-promotion. Remember, it's Boston. So if anybody doesn't understand this, I'm going to send Castle basically how to decipher a Bostonian accent. So I speak 3 languages: English, Bad English, and Bostonese. And that's about it.
What would you call Bostonese?
Bostonese, hey, park the car in Harvard Yard. Winter, summer. You can see Mark Wahlberg doing a whole thing for Vanity. He had like an iPad. He's like, Jimmy's, yeah. Jimmy's. He put Jimmy's on an ice cream, not sprinkles.
And I thought so.
Yeah, and then he's like Hootsies. Yeah, we had a few Hootsies growing up. Nor'easter, it's a really, really bad storm. I love Wahlberg.
He's got a great bunch of movies I really enjoy. So I love him. What was that one I really liked? Ted. Ted was hysterical.
Oh my God.
Jesus, I couldn't handle some of that.
What's great about him though is he's like Matt Damon, right? They can do anything.
Yeah, they're very flexible.
Like Ryan Reynolds, right? Ryan Reynolds is a great comedic actor, but when you saw him in when he did Safe House with Denzel Washington, my girlfriend was like, "Wow," she's like, "I didn't know he was a good action hero."
I think people underestimate how much actually effort goes into that, like the learning, the studying, the practicing, the developing an alternate persona. Like that's got to be a lot of work. I mean, a technique for by the way, self-help, by the way, is if you want to improve yourself, develop a second personality, just like an actor, and just go with it for a while. It actually works pretty good.
Personalities. Multiple. This is my best friend right here.
Sorry, but anyways, I know we're going to step a little bit outside of your area, specifically of martial arts, but it does go hand in hand with martial arts, as you well know, because you can't be good at anything without consistency and discipline, both of which you must have to be anything at all in any form of martial art. So what can you tell me about your particular approach or perhaps your experiences? Maybe a story time.
Story time. Let's get comfortable. Yay, story time. Well, I appreciate that, Castle. It started with, if you look back, and I'll shameless self-promote, my first book, Always Pick Last. I was a kid that sucked at every sport. My father, this is his ring, died of alcoholism when I was 12. And I was getting picked on all the time. I literally couldn't play any sport except softball because the ball was big enough. Last to tie his shoes in the neighborhood, last to take his training wheels off his bike. So it was devastating, right? He grew up, like I'm 55, I don't look like it. Say yes, Kevin. You don't look like it.
Sure.
Come on, Castle. Work.
Sure. You look great. You look great. I don't like to lie to people.
There you go. Hey, look, 55 and alive. Anyway, so that happened, and I sucked at every sport, and I had the loneliest summer of my life when my father died. I remember just like being in the house the whole time. A close uncle taught me to take karate, and I discovered when I went there, if you practice, you get better. So then I learned the value of consistency. So in one of my courses, the Burma Kearns level 1 through 4 courses, one of our questions on the test: what's more important, commitment or consistency? And everybody wrestled with that, and they're like, "Well, it's consistency." I go, yes, it's commitment. Yes, I go. You can't. It's the chicken and the egg, right? Which came first? You can't be committed unless you're consistent. You can't be consistent unless you become committed. So one thing I realized was the big, having goals. When people look at martial arts, not to digress on that, when people look at martial arts, the belt system, white belt up, is all Americanized. Back in the day, in the Asian countries, you had white and black, done. That's it, you know? And if you really look at an old school black belt, they have the same black belt. The black belt starts wearing out and looks white. You know why? Because you're always a white belt. You know, people call me an expert. I'm like, I don't consider myself, maybe I am a bit of, and this is something I learned from a mentor. I started at 12 o'clock, realized I knew nothing. And I got to 3 o'clock, thought I knew a lot. Then I got to 6 o'clock, I realized I knew nothing. Then I got to 9 o'clock, thought I knew a lot. I'm back at 12, I don't know shit. Okay. And you know how this business, it changes, evolves, this thing, that thing, you know, so it constantly changes. So the big thing I took away from martial arts is you practice, you get better. Simple. So that stuck with my head. And then with all my customers and my 2,500 trainers around the globe, because I've traveled the globe doing this, I said, you know, then it's the 3 Ds: desire, discipline, and dedication. You know, like Joe Rogan said, discipline helps you get stuff done. You know, he's like, I'm the most lazy, and I know Joe pretty well. He goes, I'm the most disciplined, lazy person there is. You know, I don't know if you heard this. When he got his black belt in jiu-jitsu, it took him 10 years. He cried because of his schedule. But he
I'm actually a huge fan. I've been following his podcast forever. I've been trying to get a guy named Doug Brignoli on his podcast for the longest time. As a matter of fact, he's my mentor in biomechanics, as a matter of fact. But regardless of it, he seems like an amazing human being, and I love that he sticks up for everything that he believes is good. And I mean, I'm glad we have him, really.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. And you know, when I was back in the day when I was training fighters, him and Mike Goldberg, the other announcer, I used to train Mike Goldie every time I went out to the fights with my fighters. And towards the end of my stint in UFC, and the Xbox came out, the first Xbox UFC game came out, right? So I'm at Peter Welch's gym, 2009, I think, or 2010, showing his guys some of the FMS stuff I just got certified in. And one of his coaches says, I know you Coach Kevin Kerns. I'm like, what? I just met you. He goes, no, man, I hear your name all the time on the Xbox game. I'm like, what?
That's awesome.
I had it sitting in my house. I'm like, I open it up and I see every time any one of my fighters, you know, like Kenny Florian, Marcus Davis, George Rizal, anytime one of those guys walked out, the color commentary was about me. So the next fight I go to, with Kenny, I text Goldie, hey Goldie, where are you? You want to work out? He's like, yeah, I'm in the gym. So I get up there. He's on the elliptical. I said, hey, Goldie. Now I've known Goldie for 3 or 4 years then. I said, Goldie, how did my name get in the Xbox game? He says, well, you know, Joe and I, Rogan, figured we kind of owed it to you. So they gave us some latitude. So we figured every time somebody walked out, you know, that was one of your guys, we talk about you.
That's fabulous, though. That's got to be kind of surreal, huh? That's like, wait, that's me on a game? That's weird. That's kind of surreal.
It's bizarre because I know we're getting away from martial arts, but when I went to my first UFC fight, as I became the strength coach for Kenny, like Kenny Flynn was the best lab rat ever. I was in the right place at the right time. This is what I tell all the trainers. I was just listening to Stallone talking about his life, where he was trying out for an acting part, wasn't right for it. And as he walked out, he said, hey, by the way, I write. And he tells him, and they're like, bring it back. He goes, if I didn't do that, he goes, that's why I tell writers and actors, they go, you never know what nerve you're going to hit.
Keep talking, yeah.
Yeah. So Kenny had hurt his back in 2006 before the Sean Shirk fight. And I was already training at Sityaton, Mark DeLagrati's gym, who's one of my, you know, longest running friends and coach in Thai boxing. And he says, you know, he hurts his back. I was a sponsor. I had a patch on the shorts for the big fight. 3 weeks before the fight, his marketing guy, who's my marketing guy, calls me. He says, hey, Kevin, Kenny hurt his back. I go, well, where's the strength coach? He had some idiot from Vermont. And the guy was an idiot. He was younger than me, didn't know what the hell, you know, these back then, people don't realize back in the early 2000s, these guys did not know how to train like fighters. They knew how to do the punch and the kick and the wrestling, but when it came to conditioning, they're lifting like bodybuilders.
I've heard that actually many times, yeah.
3 weeks before the fight, hey, I'm deadlifting heavy. I'm like, why are you even touching a weight right now? I'm like, you've got to fight, you know? There's a gentleman I had
on my podcast named Jerry Brainham, and he used to do the nutrition for boxers and stuff, and he used to help with their training programs. And these guys would have the boxers doing like endurance runs, you know what I mean? And he told them straight up, he's like, why would you have them do that? Are they running around the ring for 60 minutes? No, they're doing intense bursts of energy. So immediately that changed the structure of the planning, but people just hadn't thought about it before, you know?
It's funny that you say that, because it was a great guy, Kenny, I forget his last name, years ago, put out boxing videos. And he goes, I keep my fighters 3 to 5 miles. He goes, all I'm trying to do is stretch their lungs. He goes, because they're fighting, they're not running, so that's, that's one of the things too. So Kenny was a perfect lab rat because the big joke was, Dana White used to say, he looks like the guy at the end of the bar, the accountant you want to pick a fight with, but he was a high-level jiu-jitsu guy. Mark Delagrati from Sityatong built his striking, So when Kenny hurt his back before the Sean Strick fight in 2006 for the championship, his marketing guy called me and said, hey, Kenny hurt his back. Can you help him? Because of all my flexibility and all the stuff I know. I said, sure, shoot over. I started working with him. He's feeling better. And then I took a shot, kind of like Stallone, kind of like we've all done, right? I said, hey, Kenny, how about I come out to Vegas with you and I'll work with you, do whatever I can to help you because I want to let you win the fight. I'll pay my own way, on my own nickel, as we call it in Boston. He's like, yeah, cool. He goes out there the whole bit, fights his ass off. You probably know this. You might know the story. Bloodbath of a fight, easily outmatched. He cut Shirk in the second round. He's got Lorenzo wanted his shorts because there was so much blood in the shorts. Lorenzo Fertitta has his shorts on his wall.
Wow.
Literally, when the owners, right? So then Kenny decides he loses the fight, but his brand just jumped even higher. He hires me. And that was it. Day one in my basement, I looked at him because these guys were famous. And this goes into discipline and consistency. These guys were famous back then for train hard, fight, win, excuse the expression, fuck off. They just and then they got serious 6 weeks before a fight. So you'll hear him in earlier interviews. You'll hear something called "There's no off season." There's no off season because I said to him, I go, look, man. I go, do you like Tom Brady? He's like, yeah. I go, he's a professional, right? He's like, yeah. I said, you like, Tiger Woods? He goes, yeah, he's a professional. I go, are you a pro? He's like, yeah. I go, then friggin' act like it. There's no off season. You fight. You have a week off. Unless you're injured, you're back in the goddamn gym building the base. Building it all over because we're going to get ready for the next fight and the next fight. And you'll hear him say that all the time. And that's where the discipline comes in.
Same thing with bodybuilders. Bodybuilders seem to think there's a reason to take an off season. It's insane to me. I think they just want to be lazy. They're the guys, again, these people who take the off seasons, they're the ones who always get beaten because the other ones are working the entire time. They're practicing, they're posing the entire time. They're dieting better. They're getting more knowledge. They're training more. They're building more muscle.
Exactly. I think it was in one of the Mulligan Brothers videos. I think it was Manute Bol. He goes, the training, the competition's the easy part. It's everything behind the scenes. Everything behind the scenes. He goes, the competition is a walk in the park.
People don't understand it's like bodybuilding is just like martial arts. If you're professional and you're proud of it, it is 24/7. Every single aspect of your life is accounted for.
Even what we're doing, right? I'm 36 years in business. I'm like, you have to understand something. I eat, sleep, and this stuff every day. And I'm like, oh, something new. Like my first love, as you know, martial arts. Second love was conditioning or weightlifting. Then again, into conditioning. Third love was yoga. My ex-wife got me into yoga. 13 years I've been practicing yoga. 13 years. Okay. And I used to call it yoga. Now I can't live without it. And real quick, there was a friend of mine that has 9 schools down in Texas. Zufi Ahmed, great guy, was the #1 Middle Eastern champion, full contact karate. He brought Ken Shamrock in. Now Frank Shamrock, who was even better than Ken. He looked like he had 2 5-pound steaks on his chest. And they asked him, they go, what's a lot of your workout? But he's like, well, besides my martial arts and everything, 80% of my work, my conditioning is yoga based. I went, there you go. I always tell people, I go, I like a combination of everything. The next thing is my GF wants to do Pilates. I'm like, yeah, I'll try it. I'll try it.
Just to get back, I mean, what time did you actually, let's say, what time did you start practicing martial arts and what time did you start practicing seriously?
I started at 13. I got serious probably a year later.
Oh,
and because I had it in my head. Yeah, I had it in my head, the black belt. They told me 5 years. I did it in 3.5. Nice. And I used to train, and I trained like an animal. When my father died, I realized, to be honest, because I'm very transparent, as you know, in my books, anger was easier than sadness. I mean, my father died at 48.
I think most guys use anger as a fuel.
Absolutely.
I think most people do. They're angry at the world. They're angry at their parents. They're angry at their circumstances. They're angry that they got dealt a shit hand. They're angry at something.
Yeah, and I think it's that. And I also think, as a male, we've been taught, oh, you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to be vulnerable. You're supposed to toughen up. You know, it's like I do a lot of work with veterans with PTSD in law enforcement, right? And they're like, you know, we how do you train this guy to be a killer over in, you know, as far as the military, then you bring him back and you wonder why you can't unplug him. You know, it's like you gotta bring him back down.
That's
at the end of the day. Good.
It just seems like something that's misunderstood among males, perhaps, is they're associating two things very incorrectly. One is they're associating kindness with goodness. And as you already know, you are unable to be a good human being unless you have great capacity for violence. Unless you're able to say no, you can't be a good human being because you're going to bow to anybody and you're going to do what anybody tells you to do. You have to be able to say no to be a good person, which means you have to be strong. And that's so confusing kind and good, and also confusing weakness and vulnerability. Vulnerability is the greatest strength. Vulnerability says, I'm willing to accept and hopefully open up in the possibility of something good happening. Weakness is literally the exact opposite of that.
I appreciate that. I say it all the time. Vulnerability is his strength. I tell guys all the time, you know, when I came out with my, you know, the second book about, you know, trying to commit suicide twice in 2019, and I tell people, I go, when you're transparent, when you're transparent to the world, that's when you realize who your real friends are. Mm-hmm. You know,
Absolutely.
Real friends are.
People just don't have the balls to do that. You know, I mean, you know that very well. For the longest time, I thought I needed to have friends and I was trying to mold myself for other people. I was miserable. When I started just being myself, yeah, I was very alone for a while, but guess what? Then I found a whole bunch of real friends who were on the same wavelength as me. You know, you just got to deal with the isolation for a little while, find out who you really are.
Well, it's funny you said that, because in the anti-bullying book, my anti-bullying program, we talk about the 4 S's: speak up, stand up, stay together, self-defense. And I tell people when we go to schools and colleges, self-defense is physical last. It's mental, emotional, and spiritual way before.
Mm-hmm. Last resort, always.
And then when you look at stay together is, and I tell all of it when I do these in front of schools and everything else, I go, get with like-minded people. Bobby Fischer was a savant at 9 for chess. That was his thing. You know, there's a video up there of me with 400 students in Lowell, and we're calling it out. What do you like? Swimming, great. I like horseback. Good. Get with those people and stay with them. You know, it's like Les Brown would say, your dreams don't have to make any sense to anybody else. They're your dreams.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And if you like them and you can't find anyone else around you who supports you in them, that's okay. You got the internet. Find them on the internet. And if you can't find them on the internet, fuck them. Do it yourself.
Like Goggins said, he goes, if you don't have the right support team, get rid of them.
Yeah. You don't need them. They're in your way at that point. If they're not helping you, they're in your way.
Hey, that's the way I think. I'm like, you're either on the Burma Kearns train or you're on the tracks. Mm-hmm. You pick.
But anyways, I'm sorry, just to get back to the
Sure.
beginning, when you decided to get serious, so you were taking it, I don't want to say casually, because you're probably just like me, you probably don't take anything casually, but you were, yeah, I know, I'm the same way. So you were probably, you know, going pretty serious, let's say the first year. What changed when you said, I'm going to take this serious? What did you change? Upping the practice? Did you pay more attention, focus more on technique, more on the dieting? What was it?
All of it. I'm like, I have to make a commitment. I'm this way with everything, you know, relationships, business. I'm either all in or all out. There's no halfway.
Why
it's like product.
I never understood.
Well, it's just like, you know, when people say I'm a glass half full, my argument is like, why are you giving me a half full glass? I want a full glass. You know, what is that? You know, I'm the glass half full. No, I'm a glass fully full. It's either fully full or empty. It's one way or the other way.
Half full, half empty. I'm not sure where is the glass. Shut up.
Screw the glass. I want a screw the glass. I want a non, you know, sugar root beer. That's what I want.
Give me the bottle. What did you do specifically though? So, I mean, you made the commitment, you said, I got to get better. So you said, okay, so I'm going to dig into anything that could make me better. Or did you do it progressively in steps? Did you reach out towards mentors, the library? What was your go-to?
There you go. So I learned at 14, given what I went through, that it's okay to ask for help. So I got smart. My father was very good at building rapport, and so was my mother. Like, I had my mother, God rest her soul, memory, but my father was a regular guy that was a building inspector. And, you know, everybody knew him as Jackie, John Kerns. Jackie. Hey, Jackie, can you help me this? Yeah. You know, he couldn't build shit, but he knew what he was, you know, he could talk to people. And he always taught me at 6, he taught me, I don't care who it is, the garbage man, the postman, whoever it is, you can learn something from somebody, Kevin, always. So I said, okay, I'm going to apply myself. And I went to the guys that looked like GI Joes that were in their 20s, right? Because we had just gotten a weight room in our studio, martial arts school. I didn't know how to lift weights. I'm like, so I got to the guys that were older than me and that were black belts. Hey guys, can you teach me? They started teaching me, and boom, it just took off. Like by the time I was like 120, and by the time I think I was like 16, I was 155, and I was bench pressing 320. That was my max. And I hadn't even started using my legs because I was afraid they were going to get tight, so I wasn't really squatting. I could rack out pull-ups. I mean, I was an animal. I cracked my shoulder going to a powerlifting competition. I used to warm up with 2 1/4. I was like, people couldn't believe how freakishly strong I was for that size. I didn't know. And I just applied it.
Just out of curiosity, just based on what you just said, of curiosity, when did you learn that your power comes from your legs for martial arts and start training those?
I learned that probably when I was like 18.
Oh, no.
yeah, 18. I have and the funny thing is, my arms grew right away from all this. And I don't do, people like, you do a lot of curls. I'm like, no, man, I've got like a 17.5-inch arm and I've never done steroids in my life. I'm like, they just exploded. I used to say, if I do chest, my arms get a pump. The minute I touch weights on my legs literally exploded. I'm 5. I mean, I don't take my measurements. I used to years ago, but I'm 5'7", 180, and I'm like 10% body fat. I get a 27-inch thigh, and I haven't lifted weights with my thighs in years.
No, you're a good genetic responder. You're probably more of an ectomorph too, as well. But I mean, I'm not going to shortchange anything to say about the consistency of discipline of daily training either. I mean, over the years, how many years of that is there? That's why it's still there. I mean, even if you're doing shit wrong for a really long time, you're still going to have results.
Yeah, my legs took off so much. Like my best leg press record was 996, and the only reason it was 996 is because we didn't have enough weight. That's why I didn't hit 1,000. But it was like 4. I used to warm up with 600. Just for like when I was a bodybuilder, I was like, people like, what the? They're like, this doesn't make sense.
It's a good comparison. I mean, I apologize. A lot of people have heard me say this before on my YouTube channel and shit, but I used to be a power lifter. And when I was a power lifter, I was between 155 and 165 pounds, but I was actually deadlifting over 600. I was squatting over 500. And it had nothing to do well, I shouldn't say that. It didn't have too much to do with my muscle strength. It was my ability to use basically my freakishly strong tendons I had developed. But it wasn't until I switched over to bodybuilding where I really, actually learned about several things involving hypertrophy, just things about bodybuilding that I actually started growing muscle. It was a big difference. Yep. And I mean, well, that actually goes to consistency and discipline, because I wanted the bodybuilder physique, and I had to go through a whole lot of kind of dumbness consistently with the discipline of going through that, but still at the same time thinking, well, what if there's a better way? What if there's a better way? And keeping to learn continuously as I was doing things poorly and such, But even if you're doing things poorly, you're still learning the whole time. Eventually you'll get there, but you're never going to get there even if you don't start,
Big one, right? Gandhi. Journey of 1,000 miles to greatness starts with one step. Take the step.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be afraid of failure.
Well, that's the problem is people say 1,000 miles. I don't want to do that. How about just one step for now? And then we keep our head down. How about that? You know what I mean? That's what we got to do.
Yeah. Like Les Brown would say, inch by inch is a cinch. Yard by yard's hard.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I think that's an American attitude when people like, oh, it's just too lofty. I'm like, yeah, when you're climbing the mountain, if you look up, it's going to take you forever. Look down, look right at your feet. Keep your head where your feet are. Real simple. That's a Al-Anon.
It's the same thing what's the same thing with anything. When you're in the gym, you're pumping weights. How many times you say, I got 10 reps to do, but then as you're doing them, you break it down. Okay, 5, or just two threes. Oh God, 2 and a 1. I can do that. It's easier to your brain if you break it down.
Exactly. People don't understand that. I'm like, I don't get that. And I explain it to clients all the time.
You have to break it down. I mean, my whole company is brick by brick for a reason. My whole thing is you lay one perfect brick every day, and eventually your castle will be built. That's the thing. But you don't sit. People know how hard a castle is to build. It takes centuries. It takes thousands of people, billions of dollars. You don't think about that. You think, let me lay one perfect brick today. That's it.
Yeah. One of my talks is build the basement. Build your basement. Because you know what? You can spend $100,000 on the roof. If you spend $5,000 on the basement, on the foundation, what good is it?
Mm-hmm. Or even if you build the perfect foundation, but then you don't give the cement time to set. It's also, I mean, it's a metaphor, but you get the idea. It's the same thing, you know?
Now we're going to get philosophical. There you go.
Oh, sorry. I don't want to break your brain.